Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Illustration Department podcast. My name is Giuseppe Castellano. In this podcast, I talk to folks in illustration, graphic design, publishing, animation, and other creative fields about their work, the lessons they've learned, and the bumps and bruises they've experienced along the way. In this episode, my guest is award-winning illustrator and author Greg Pizzoli. As an aspiring illustrator, it can feel like success just isn't in the cards. Okay, for now. What may feel like an impossibility today may not be tomorrow. On my other topics, Greg talks about how some of his characters reflect his own multitudes. We discuss why "for now" are two very important words for aspiring book creators. And Greg shares what simple steps illustrators can take if they want to write. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
I've been listening to so many episodes lately. I'm really enjoying it.
What do you mean lately?
Well, I mean, I've sent you messages over the years saying like,
yes,
hey,
you have.
Like this was a particularly good one or whatever,
Yeah.
But I just listened, I think for the second time, to the Leonard Marcus one this morning. Mm-hmm. And I listened to the Brad Holland one recently. Yeah. I really loved that one. Yeah. So it's great. I think it's a really good service. I don't know if you see it that way, but for like a community of people who have chosen to work alone by themselves, it's nice to hear other people out there talking about what they do. So it's good.
Well, I appreciate that, Greg. I'm going to quote thee and add that to my website somewhere.
Okay.
I mean, that's the idea. That's always the idea. It's it kind of started off with like wanting and needing something to do, and my wife suggested that I should do a podcast, and I knew some folks, and so like it was a good way of leveraging some connections that I had made through 20 years of being an art director at S&S and Penguin, and so it felt like a natural move. It's certainly grown way beyond anything I could have imagined. I thought it was going to die after 20 episodes. Personally, but
sure. Well,
here we are, 7 years later.
Yeah, I mean, well, and congrats for that. I mean, because that kind of momentum, I'm sure it doesn't come easy. It's you that's pushing it the whole time. Yeah. Do you remember that we met once? Do you remember
on the
this?
subway? We bumped into each other on our way to the Society of Illustrators.
Incorrect.
We bumped into each other in the offices on 14th on the 14th floor
at 345 Hudson, as I recall. And
I saw your head popping up over a cubicle, and you saw my head, and you were like, "Hey," and I was like, "Hey," right?
I think maybe I had been talking to Jim Hoover,
That's
who
correct.
I listened to the 2 episodes that he did way back in the day, and I think you kindly offered to walk me to the subway because I'm not a New Yorker, and you took me there. You put me on the train, or maybe we were going to the Society of Illustrators. I can't recall the destination, but I remember. Okay.
We were going to the original art show.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Well, thank you for getting me to the subway. And so I got there on time, I guess.
It's my pleasure. Yeah. Are you kidding? It's like, because at the time this was maybe, I don't know, probably 2014, 15, maybe the watermelon seed. Do you remember which piece? Did you have a piece of art in the show?
I did. I had a little streak there for a while where I was in the original art show for maybe 5 years in a row.
Okay, flex, nice.
And well, and then never again. But I think just based on like what I was working on with Penguin at the time, it was probably the year that like 2015 Tricky Vic got into the show.
I thought it was going to be Quest for Z, but yeah, Tricky Vic was before that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Nice. You did Tricky Vic as a grad student. Did I read that right?
It started in grad school. I had a studio mate who sort of told me the story. I think she had read about it on like a history.com blog or something. Okay. And I didn't really start working on it in earnest until after I had graduated. But I was teaching at the University of the Arts, which recently closed. Yep. Yeah, it's very sad.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, it's awful. I mean, I know so many people. I texted people when I heard about it through some friends of mine and sadly was the bearer of bad news for some people who lost their jobs. They heard about it through me, so that's not great.
God.
Yeah,
sorry.
And my wife was teaching there I don't know if she was teaching there that semester or maybe she was about to teach there for the summer. But no, I mean it's a loss for the city, and I think like it's a loss that will be felt. You know, my wife and I met. We're both artists. We met in that program,
right?
And we stayed in Philadelphia. So I just think there will be fewer artists coming to Philadelphia. You know,
unless Temple and other schools, which sounds as if I was talking to Matt Curtius, who's over at,
I listened to that one. Matt lives 2 blocks south of me, maybe 1.5 blocks south of me. Yeah.
in South Philly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, let's see what happens with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I wish them all the best, but yeah, it's, anyway, yeah, Tricky Vic, I was teaching at University of the Arts.
Screen printing, right?
Screen printing, and I was teaching continuing ed, basically like poster design. Sweet. And
you're this is Saul Bass. You should do what he does.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you can hack it.
Right.
Later, after a few years of teaching screen printing, Matt did bring me on to do an illustration program that I did with Matt Phelan and Zach OHora. The three of us like sort of co-taught a class.
Sweet.
The three of us.
Okay. I missed the invitation for that one. That's all right. It'll come back around.
I think the prerequisite was you had to be able to walk to the school to get there.
Yeah, right. I was in Brooklyn at the time, so couldn't hack that one.
Impossible.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I audited an offset printing class that my department head was teaching, and I had pitched Tricky Vic to my agent at the same time I had pitched Watermelon Seed. Mm-hmm. I remember he said like, "Oh, that Watermelon Seed's that sounds pretty funny. You should do that." And it was kind of like code for, I think he said about Tricky Vic, he was like, you'd have to do it just the right way, which is
keep working on it.
Keep working on it. Yeah.
I don't want to hear about it for another handful of months.
Well,
or ever.
And I was talking to a friend of mine and we were getting lunch, and he really encouraged me to make it into a zine. And so the opportunity to sort of audit this class came up. And then once I had made the zine version of it, through my agent, a few publishers got to see it, and Ken Wright, who was the publisher at Viking at the time,
I remember Ken,
gave me what ended up becoming 3 books: Tricky Vic, Quest for Z, and then the Pizza book.
Yeah. I remember hanging out in Ken's office from time to time.
Yeah, I remember about Ken's office, that corner office that he had as I recall, he had an original Bemelman's, like, I don't know, 30 by 40 inches or some gigantic piece from the Penguin, the archives.
Dude, there was an original Nancy Drew painting that was probably 3 by 4.5 feet that no one wanted. Wow. It was my responsibility. It was part of my team, my group at Penguin. As the manager of the design team, they were like, I don't know, you figure it out. Do something with it. And like, I can walk out of this building with this painting and no one would know.
Yeah.
Or care. Now, looking back on it, knowing what I know now, I would have lifted it. I would have fucking lifted that painting. Pardon my language.
Well, I can't condone that behavior, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get it.
Signal received. Yeah. Speaking of South Philly, which, by the way, I like to refer to as the best Philly. I'm lying. That's the first time I've ever said that.
Oh.
But, it's my jam. A lot of Italians, obviously.
I live about a block away from the Italian market, so sort of the north end of the Italian market. So my neighborhood is sort of right between what's proper old school Philadelphians would call South Philly and what realtors would call Center City. So I'm like kind of right in that zone.
Have you ever jogged around in a gray hoodie?
With those burning trash barrels are still there as part of the Italian. It looks a lot like it does in the Rocky movie, for sure.
Incredible. Also, my all-time favorite restaurant is in South Philly, and I wonder how close you are. I don't want to dox you or anything, but are you familiar with the Polizzi Social Club?
I don't know that I've been there. I don't think so.
Oh boy.
I'll have to look that. I'm going to write that down.
It's the only restaurant, and all of this is true, people and Greg. It's the only restaurant in which I've eaten something and cried.
Wow.
Because it was that good.
Okay. Well, you've set the bar fairly high there, but
Well, to just lay that out a little bit more, I'm obviously a son of immigrant Italians, and my mom.
I noticed all the vowels in your name.
Hey,
I have a couple of
those. You do have a couple. Hey, man, the best people are the people whose last names end in a vowel. But my mom, when she was able to, she could cook better than anyone I've ever. I mean, her food was so good. It was like real simple peasant food, Southern Italian peasant food. Just amazing stuff. And then the older she got, and with arthritis, and just sort of like she's slowing down. So her food is still fantastic. It's still my mom, but it's not as great as it used to be. Anyway, this restaurant.
Mom doesn't listen to this podcast.
No, she definitely doesn't. She doesn't even know what a podcast is. She's like, what do you talk? Is a podcast? Yes, Mom, don't worry about it. It's like a radio. Don't worry about it. But this restaurant is the only place where I've had food that tasted like the kind of food she made when I was a kid.
Okay.
That's why.
All right. Well, I'll have to check it out. I mean, I have 2 young kids, so to be honest, we don't go out to eat as often as we used to because you will. It'll come back. We'll get back out there, but spending $15 for a plate of buttered noodles that they're not going to eat anyway. I don't want to do.
Preach.
But I do take my kids to after swim class every time we go to Termini's Italian bakery in South Philly, and I live pretty close to Isgro Bakery, and there are a lot of great old school Italian bakeries. And the thing I love about living here really is one of the things is how walkable it is. Yeah. So, we walk to school, I walk to the studio, I walk to swim class, that kind of stuff. I love it.
Is your studio not in your building then? Not in your home?
It's not in my home. No, it's about half a mile from my home. My studio project, well, we bought our studio building in October of 2019 after being in like kind of a shared artist warehouse space for 9 years. And then before then we were in like another shared artist space. And before then we were in school. So Kay and I have always shared a studio together since school. When we took over this building, it reeked of dog pee. It's the only reason that we were able to afford it. I think most people walked in and like walked right out. But we refinished the floors. We figured it out.
Okay. Nice job.
And basically it's a duplex. So I'm on the second floor. I have the kitchen. That's where I'm talking to you now. So I have the whole second floor. My wife, our studios are connected. She has the whole third floor. She has the bathroom. So we're up and down in each other's studios all day.
Nice.
And then the first floor is an apartment that we rent out. And before that, sort of like right at the beginning of COVID, in 2020, we moved my dad in there. My dad has sadly passed away.
Yeah, sorry about that. I saw that when you posted it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So then you know where I'm going. I mean, the story was that we were his caretakers. So we moved him in like February 11th of 2020. So like, I don't know, a month before the city shut down, everything shut down.
Right.
Anyway, he is no longer living there. And so there's a little apartment downstairs and there's a very nice woman that lives there.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Love it.
So anyway, so that's our studio. Yeah. It's about like a 10-minute walk from my house. It's nice.
You said Italian bakery. Now that's all I can think of. I was talking to an illustrator yesterday about the political affiliations / social classes of junk food. Shout out to Marcella. That part of the conversation turned to, if you were a junk food or any food, what food would you be? I thought you'd be a good person to ask that question.
What kind of food would I be? Oh boy. I mean, people do ask me a lot if I wrote the pizza book because my last name is Pizzoli and it sounds like pizza. And I do love pizza. It's like pizza. The history of pizza is actually the second book on pizza I've written. And I do love watermelon. That is like my favorite summer snack. Okay. So I guess I'll just go watermelon. I'm comfortable with that. People already think of me as, hey, it's the watermelon guy.
You're the watermelon guy. All right. My answer to her, and I slept on it, and it's still where I'm sitting. I have 3 options, and I haven't quite picked one yet, but they do have a common denominator, and you'll see what it is. I am either, if I were a food, I would be a raisinette, chocolate covered, sweet on the outside. All right, I'm canceling. That's it. We're done.
Next.
We're done. Cut them off. Cut them off. A raisinette. So it's like sweet on the outside, like a shell on the outside, sweet on the outside. Good it's on like the inside.
A raisin posing as candy, but okay that's fine. Right.
Just pump your brakes, dude. Good and plenty, which is a little hard, sweet, a little hard though on the outside, and slightly bitter on the inside. I feel like that's a little me.
Do you have a candy from after 1930 that you want to talk about?
That's
have you ever had
I'm cosplaying like an old man like you wouldn't believe, dude.
I think it's called Good and Fruity, actually. Have you ever had Good and Fruity?
Sure.
Yeah, the sister candy to Good and Plenty, the better candy, I think.
Right. So I'm an old candy, a stale old candy.
A Charleston Chew.
I prefer, what's the one that's the peanut butter chew? What's that one called? I think it's called like Peanut Chew or something, right?
I think it's just Peanut Chew. Yeah, you're right.
That's a good one.
I'm not going to disagree with chocolate and peanut butter. Raisins, I draw a hard line, but that's fine.
Let's move on before you get canceled from the pro raisin community. Speaking of watermelons, so was the watermelon? Now let's get serious and talk about books and mental health and illustrations and stuff. Was the watermelon seed, which was published in 2013 by Hyperion, your first book, or was it the first one you wrote and illustrated?
It was my first book. It was my debut.
Straight up.
Both. I had as the first time being published, period.
For which you then won the Theodore Seuss or Seuss, I don't know, Geisel Award the following year. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the first of quite a few Geisel Awards that you've won. Nice job.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
I did notice something, that many of your characters exhibit light neuroses, from panic attacks to wishing away your family to being a sore loser. So the question is, through your books, are we seeing the multitudes of Greg Pizzoli?
You know, I asked that question to my editor one time. We were walking in Central Park, and I said, what do you think our books are about? At that point we had made sort of 5 books, and I think 4 of the 5 had a character who was up at night, unable to sleep because of some neuroses or something that was bugging them. And I remember she said, I think they're a lot about you. They're a little bit about me. And I think they're just about anxiety for sure, but it's an anxiety that kids can relate to. Right. I think, sometimes you take something that bugs you in life, or I do at least, or, something I'm worried about, or some character trait that I feel I have or I observe in someone else. And you just kind of turn the screws a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think you can have I don't know if you've seen my book, Goodnight Owl, about an owl who hears a noise in the middle of the night. And really what that book is about is allowing the kids who are reading the book or being read to feel smarter than the main character, because they see right from the jump that it's a mouse who's making the noise. Right. But it just takes the whole book for the owl to realize that, and he destroys his house. He's looking for this thing. And once he sort of understands that unknowable thing, he can put a name on it, and he can see what it is. It doesn't bother him anymore. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what that book was about to me, was this unknown thing. Mm-hmm. Also, knowing that my books are going to be performed, that. Sure. It's either going to be read to someone in a school or a library, storytime setting, or it's going to be read, to one-on-one on a lap, letting that kid sort of feel smarter than the main character, which is something that a lot of my favorite books when I was a kid would do that. There would be something, you would sort of outwit the main character and sort of revel in their neuroses. That it's going to be okay. And you can just kind of laugh at how hysterical they're getting.
Definitely. To be fair to you, not all of your characters have some sort of mental health issue. The girl in When the Sun Goes Down, she couldn't be more zen or more adorable, as I'm sure you've been described many times, zen and adorable.
Yeah, I have been. Thank you.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah, no, not all the characters that way. That book, the When the Sun Goes Down, nice segue. I'll call it out to ruin it right now. But I think like that that was a different style of book for me. That was the first time I felt like I was writing a bedtime book, really. Mm-hmm. And I think it really truly came from reading so many board books and bedtime books with my two girls. Right. Because my understanding of my work before I had kids was I would perform it to large auditoriums of kids or 500 kids on the floor of a cafeteria at an elementary school. Mm-hmm. And my books had to work that way, right? And then COVID happened. I was taking care of my dad, and our first baby was born in October of 2020. And my audience totally changed. Like it just went from, I wasn't doing any school visits. Mm-hmm. I did a few like Zoom visits with schools and stuff, but it wasn't the same. I wasn't touring the way that I had toured before.
Right.
And my audience became this tiny, beautiful little girl. Mm-hmm. And I started reading the noisy books by Margaret Wise Brown, or the important books, or Eric Carle's books, a lot of Ruth Krauss.
Yep.
My understanding of those books, which it just didn't really feel like it related to my work before then, really opened up.
When I read When the Sun Goes Down, two other books you did not mention came to my mind. Bill Martin Jr., Brown Bear, What Do You See? And P.D. Eastman's Are You My Mother? It felt like a little bit of a mix of those two. And I mean that in the most praiseworthy way.
Thank you. I think one or two of the reviews have mentioned Brown Bear too. And I think it's that
the tempo of it.
It's that cadence, and it's a new animal every page or every other page.
Yeah, it's very sweet.
And I do love that book. I can't say that I was directly trying to reference it or even really thinking about it when I wrote it or when I did the pictures. But hey, if you want to put it in those leagues, if other people want to say that, I'll take it.
Yeah, it just reminds me, and of course, your art doesn't hurt in this regard. It feels as if it came from another era, this book. And much of your work does. I mean, it's there's a contemporary slant to some of the subject matter and racing and whatnot. But, hell, Go Dog Go, that was racing. So what am I saying? Mm-hmm. Like your work feels like it should have been published literally by Dr. Seuss's when he launched in the 1960s, the beginning book series. And this book very much fits within that era, in my opinion.
I think it's interesting how people interpret the work. I haven't had a ton of experience reading this book yet with kids. Mm-hmm. I was in Connecticut last week doing some school visits, and I mostly talked to like the kindergartners through fourth graders. They had a preschool class, and they asked me to just stop in for 5 minutes to talk to the preschoolers, because they're not going to be able to dig the whole 45-minute assembly. But if you could stop in for 5 minutes.
Sure.
And so I stopped in and I read When the Sun Goes Down. And it was my first time reading to kids that were not my own, There's a sequence in the book where it asks the kid a lot of questions. And it's supposed to be like kind of a call and response where they say no back to the reader. And they just like got it immediately, like the preschoolers they just were saying no back to me every single time. And it was just like, I was like, oh, this works. It works so well. So it's interesting to see. I'm interested rather to see how people will respond to it. Because I do feel as though it's different than my other work. I wonder if the other timeliness that you're picking up on too is part of my process. I mean, to me, you're sort of like talking about the content, like the terms of the writing, but my image making, because I do a lot of spot color work, and I work in really limited color palettes.
Yep.
I think like a lot of times when I see reviews of my work and the various publications and stuff, they'll say like a 50s inspired or a 70s palette or so. They will sort of talk about it in terms that I haven't really even considered. I just like haven't thought about it that way. Obviously I consider my palettes and I think about it very carefully, but like,
sure.
I haven't thought like, I'm going to go for a 70s mod palette or whatever they, sort of put onto it.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, in other interviews, you've mentioned other greats like Saul Bass, Tomi Ungerer, Ed Emberley. There is a common denominator. Graphic, simple, but not simple as in bad. Simple as in like direct shapes. Really, really thoughtful palettes. I mean, your palettes are so thoughtful. You don't even just go with the CMYK, right? Do you do every single book is like Pantone replacements of the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black?
No, I have worked that way. I have my book that Margaret Wise Brown wrote, Two Little Trains. I illustrated with rubber stamps.
Yeah,
and we did you sort of like just picked custom spot colors, but it's pretty close to CMYK. It's like the red is more like a rhodamine than like a magenta.
Stronger,
yeah. But no, I mean, like Lucky Duck, that mint green that's on the cover is the spot color. That's the chip for the mint green there.
Right.
And I do work with CMYK sometimes. My Earl and Worm books were made in CMYK, just for a variety of reasons. Yeah. I got to meet Tomi Ungerer once at a book signing. Dude. I got to like sort of shake his hand, but to be honest, there was a guy in front of me. Yeah. Well, and I got 5 books signed, and it was great, and I got to hear him talk for an hour. But there was a guy in front of me who I was not yet published. I think it was 2011, so I think I had just signed my first book deal.
Yep,
and
it was the first year I started at Penguin.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, this would have been like fall of 2011.
Yeah, I started October of 2011. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember at the time, like Phelan was republishing a lot of his books?
Yes. And he was back.
Yeah. And there's a whole episode right there about sort of, yeah.
I'm actually holding back on it because we don't have a whole lot of time. And if I start talking about Tomi Ungerer and what the ALA did and his cancellation, and don't get me started.
Well, you should just tell your audience to watch Far Out Is Not Far Enough.
Yeah.
The documentary.
It's come up. It's come up. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, I got to meet him, but there was a guy in front of me who already had published a few books, and he sort of like got his photo taken with time. He sort of like sucked all the oxygen out. So I wasn't then going to be like, oh, I also make books, but I don't have one,
And you're like tapping him on the shoulder, and you're like, excuse me, Mr. Sendak, can you please move out of the way? No, I'm kidding. I don't know. It was probably past at that point.
But
no, he was alive.
One of the things I love about Tommy's work and I love about Ed's work is how varied it is and how different it is from book to book.
Yeah.
Ed in particular, I just think like he would work in woodcuts, and then he'd work in pen and ink, and then he'd do watercolor, and he did all these like crazy comic books like back in the 70s when no one was really doing that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that about his life as an artist too, that he sort of didn't do the same thing over and over again.
No.
And I've heard you say on your podcast many times, I've heard many other illustrators say, because I've listened to so many episodes, they always say like, oh, I really hate the word style, or I don't like to use the word style. I hate that word style.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, like, what is it about that word that you hate? Like, what is it about that bugs you about it? And because it seems like it bugs a lot of people. They all sort of say like, oh yeah, I hate style too.
Well, I mean, look, if I'm being like honest with the people and with you, it's not that I hate it. I know I say I hate it all the time, but it's not that I hate it. I can't think of a better word to even use when talking about describing one's work. It's not that I hate it. It's how what am I trying to say? Think and then speak. I don't hate the word. I hate how people define the word. In other words, like it's a great word if every illustrator agreed that the definition of style isn't meant to limit your creative interests. That's my problem with it.
Yeah. And I've heard that from teachers. I occasionally, so except for that one class that I sort of co-taught, I've never really taught an illustration class, but I've been invited to talk to, I think you did it, the MICA grad students.
Yeah.
You give a little lunchtime lecture and talk to them, and
yeah.
The various schools in the area sometimes will do stuff, and it does really. I've butted heads sometimes with teachers who will say like, oh, well, they have to have their style. They've got to, like really. And I'm just like, well, look at me, man. I don't know. I look at Tricky Vic and look at the watermelon seed.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel very grateful that Tricky Vic happened sort of before the watermelon seed came out, when I was still not that far away. There's like a helicopter and sirens in my background. I don't know if you can hear that.
Wow. Gotta love Philly.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
They found you. Finally.
But, all that to say, like, I wasn't that far away from like my zine making days. And I just was able to sort of push that more like graphic design, like the more of the Sal Bass influence, or the Saul Steinberg influence than, maybe some of the Roger Hargreaves or Ed Emberley influence that like came in my picture books later.
Oh, right. Hargreaves. I see that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which Mr. Men are you?
Mr. Bump, maybe. Clumsy. Clumsy.
Who's the tall one? Is he just Mr. Tall? I don't think so.
I think there is a Mr. Tall. There's also Mr. Skinny.
I'll tell you, used to be me. Yeah, go ahead.
My least favorite one is Mr. Messy. Have you ever read that book, Mr. Messy?
I haven't.
My wife did a residency in England last year at a gallery, like a gallery spot in Norwich. And so the whole family, we went to England for 4 weeks. So I was just dad for a month while she did her thing. Right. And we went to a lot of bookshops, secondhand bookshops, and we bought a lot of the Mr. Men, because, those books there, I mean, they're everywhere, like those characters are everywhere. So we bought a whole slew of them, and Mr. Messy, and I'm not denigrating anyone, okay. But, the whole book is like, he's messy, his house is unkept, and these two guys, Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy, show up, and they clean up his house against his will. They fix everything. Yeah. And then they grab him by the arms and legs and put him in the bath and like scrub him clean so that he's not messy anymore.
Nope, I'm out.
And yeah. And then he sort of like resolves to like, well, I guess this is a good thing. The only problem is I have to change my name. And they all have a good laugh. And that's the end of the book. I'm just like, what? What is happening to Mr. Messy?
Oh, gosh. I was the art director for Mr. Men, Little Miss for 7 years.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was one of the brands I was in charge of at Penguin.
Oh, yeah, I love the designers of those books. Just the
I mean, we were the steward of those books. Like we obviously made sure not to alter anything. But yeah, we worked with his son Adam
and he took over illustrating and writing a lot of the stuff. Yeah,
that's correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a fun. It was just cool. Like I'm the art director for Mr. Men, Little Miss books. Like that was such a strange. It was wild. Like I didn't even know that that's what part of my responsibility was going to be when I took that job. And then I showed up and they're like, and you're the art director for these books now. I'm like, okay, that's my childhood. Sounds great. Let's go. There is another artist that I wondered if you were familiar with his name, Roy McKie. Does that ring a bell at all?
Yeah. Yeah. Roy McKie did he do Sam and the Firefly, or was that's Peter Eastman? That's Peter Eastman. Roy McKie did some of the Theo Lessig books, the like Dr. Seuss wrote under a pseudonym.
How many pseudonyms did he have? 3, 4? Like Theo Lessig, which is hilarious. Theo Lessig
for sure.
Dr. Seuss, obviously. I think he probably wrote a few other Geisel.
Those might be the only two. Oh, Ted Geisel might have been another one.
Yeah. Maybe.
But yeah, I know that name. Was it like Wacky Wednesday or not Wacky Wednesday?
I think maybe the one that you might recognize. I think maybe the one that he's most known for is 10 Apples Up on Top.
Yes, yeah. And there's another one called like Thumbs something.
Maybe. But yeah, I mean, I just saw Roy McKie's stuff and certainly your work, and there are lots of similarities. Interestingly, so remember I told you half an hour ago we were going to bring it back to Lancaster, PA?
Oh, sure.
You went to undergrad in Millersville, PA.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You grew up around Lancaster.
I studied English there. Yep.
He was in New York for the longest time, and then he ended up settling down in New Holland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is 20 miles from Millersville.
Yeah, and actually, I lived in York, which is about 5 miles from New Holland, so it's not far at all.
Yeah, and he moved there in 2010. So you may have already left. You may You were already with the AmeriCorps, right?
Well, I did AmeriCorps 2005 to 2007. And so by then I was living in Philly. To 2010, I would have been, actually, I graduated from UArts, the MFA program, in 2009. Okay. So I would have been working a day job and teaching screen printing at night in 2010.
That's not the weirdest connection of all time, but it's, as I was doing research for you, I saw Rory McKie. I was like, man, this looks a lot like Greg Pizzoli's work. And then as I was doing research, realized he settled in New Holland. See how like this stuff happens all the time. And I find that to be really interesting. And maybe I'm the only one. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think like so my wife has an exhibition up right now at the gallery that was University of the Arts Hamilton Hall. It's sort of been taken over by this company, they're sort of like a pro arts and real estate. I don't know. I don't really know what they do, so I can't even define it. But they own a building in South Philly called Bach that used to be South Philly Technical School.
Matt talked about it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think he has his studios there. And anyway, so now they have this building that used to be at UArts, and my wife has a big exhibition there through the end of May. As part of that exhibition, she felt, I think, really like she wanted to sort of honor UArts and the legacy, the 150 years that it was an institution. Mm-hmm. And so she set up a library of people who went there as part of her exhibition. There was like kind of a little reading room area. Mm-hmm. And she was just going through the list of people. I forget her name, Katherine. She won a Caldecott medal for this book about like an Easter egg tree. I forget her last name.
How long ago?
Probably like the 40s, 50s, maybe. Beautiful little book. Really, like almost got like a Fractor kind of style. If you're familiar with like the Fractor, Pennsylvania Dutch, like Fractor stuff.
Katherine with a C or a K?
I think it's Katherine with a K, and I want to say her last name starts with an H, and this is easily Googleable, but I turned my phone into
I refuse to go. I'm using my brain.
Mode.
I'm using my brain.
But you know who else did is Aliki. Aliki went to
Brandenberg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No shit.
That's a big influence on me, for sure.
Oh, for sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Her work's amazing.
And someone else, a podcast guest you had, when I was at Millersville, this was a huge moment for me. Seymour Chwast came to the school, and he gave a lecture, and he did a critique, and I stayed up all night, and everything that implies, making a screen print for a critique by Seymour Chwast, and
outstanding.
I mean, it was right around the time too when. Glazer was still alive, sure. And he and Seymour Chwast and some of the other pushpin guys were doing like a book tour for that 50 years of pushpin book that they put out at the time, and we did a class trip to New York to go to their book signing, and then he came to our school and led a critique, and so I don't know. There have been. I started to say before, I got to spend a day with Ed Emberley at his studio. There have just been like sort of moments like that where I've met these people who you sort of can't believe that you're there. You can't believe that you're art directing Mr. Men. I can't believe that Seymour Chwast is telling me why he doesn't like my screen print.
This podcast is produced by the Illustration Department, a global leader in online education for illustrators. Visit illustrationdept.com for offerings like mentorships and portfolio reviews, testimonials, our alumni showcase, our best-selling Substack, and more. That's illustrationdept.com. And now, back to our conversation. My daughter's like, I'm sort of like in a sort of my bedroom closet area. And so she needs to get in here to do something. And I'm like, you can come in. I can mute myself. That's fine.
Oh, okay.
She's like, what are you doing? You recording a podcast? I'm like, yeah.
Anyway. No, so I mean, I would think you have the listenership to justify the like the on air light for your hallway or something.
I have one. I'm staring right at it.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I need to install it. I just need to install it outside of my bedroom door.
Okay. I don't know if they would go to Kennett, but I know some good electricians if you need somebody.
So here's what I'm talking about as far as like weird connections. You mentioned Seymour Chwast. Mm-hmm. He went to high school in Brooklyn, close to Coney Island, probably in Coney Island, with Frank Frazetta.
Oh, wow.
And
they went to high school together, or they just went to the same school?
They went to the same school. I don't know if they went together, although feels like they're the same age.
They might be the same age. Yeah, maybe.
And Roy McKie.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Weird, right?
Good school. Yeah.
Seriously. I think it's called, I don't have it in front of me. Should I look it up? Fine, I'll look it up. I think it's called like Abraham Lincoln High School in Coney Island.
Okay.
Whatever. I'm not looking it up. I'll look it up after. And if it's wrong, I'll take this out. If it's right, I'll leave it in and it'll make me sound smarter.
Okay.
Sounds
good.
I'll just leave all of that in. That's fine. So coming sort of toward the end of it, I have a sort of a weird question that, like, I don't know if this is either a really good question or the dumbest question I've asked in a long time. I really, truly can't decide which one this is. So I like your work. How's that for critical analysis?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I listened to a podcast recently of yours where you were talking about, you were like, there's this one person, I don't understand why they have a career. They're just not good.
It's Zachariah OHora.
And I was like, I was like, is he talking about me? You know?
No, I am not talking about you. It's Matt Phelan. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Both great guys, both deserving of their career. You know, Zach just won 2 Emmys, so he's
I saw that.
Yeah,
on the grams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's what people call it. Whatever.
It's not.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have told you over the course of your career so far that they like your work. Certainly, I do. Do you?
Thank you.
Do you like your work?
You know, I think generally I am striving to like my work. You know,
that's a good answer.
I heard a musician talk about their work in this way, and it really felt like it sort of it made me feel very close to my own work, in that they thought of so they're talking about a musician song,
right?
They think of it as like 3 parts, right? There's like the idea that's in your head, the sort of like idea that, you know, you get juiced about and want to make something. And then there's the record, which is like the document, or in my case, the book, you know, it's the actual book.
Okay. Following you.
And then for a musician, there's their performance. And that song will change, you know, as they go on tour. It will, like, you know, they'll start noodling around or, you know, add a different bridge or something to it. And it will change over the years. And it probably will never be as good as the initial idea that you had. And it will never really be totally the document either. In terms of my work, like bring it just back to illustration, like that document, the book, is not something I return to super often. I don't sit around my studio and look at my books. But I do a lot of school visits, and I do that performance part of it a lot. Then I really like it. You know, then I'm not, but if I'm sitting in my studio looking at my books, I will see the flaws. I'll sort of see the, you know, I wish I could go back and re-illustrate that page, or why didn't I should have, you know, repaginated this part or something. But when I am with kids and I'm reading it, and that's sort of like how the book is supposed to live, I generally feel pretty good about it. It depends, I guess, on how the presentation goes. Yeah. But I'm also aware of that first thing, that like the idea, you're just never going to get there. And I think if you can like accept that, then it just lets you start the next thing.
Yeah.
I think about my work as like, this is the best that I could do right now. You know, this is not my best book. It's not like the best book ever or whatever, but it's the best that I could do right now. If I can get there, if I can do that, feel like I did my best for now, then I feel pretty good about it.
Oh my God. Thank you, Greg, so much for saying those 2 words, for now. There are people listening, so this is real. I have the receipts. That's what I've been saying to illustrators over the last handful of months.
Oh, really?
Those 2 words. I've finally come to this place in my own like creative, you know, work, when I find myself being overly critical, like spiraling into like hypercritical mode. Those 2 words, for now, help me kind of like pull the chute a little bit. You know, it's like my podcast isn't exactly where I want it to be for now. It's getting better. There's a certain sound, there's a certain kind of tenor to each episode that I really want to try and capture. I mean, if I'm being honest with everybody and human, I want it to sound like a fucking professional podcast. You know what I'm saying? I don't want it to sound like, hi, I have a podcast. I want it to be real. And it's
I think I know the podcast you are referencing.
Oh, dude. Greg, we have like ESPN right now going on. But it's getting there. It's not where I want it to be, but I'm not going to approach that as if it's permanent. And so many illustrators that I talk to, everything they under the sun, I don't really do well with color. Okay, for now, but you will,
right.
Right. Or I can't draw hands for now. I'm getting rejected left, right, and center from art directors. I'll never be able to make it in this industry for now. Like that's what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. But what's happening right now does not cement what will happen in the future. You have no idea what's going to happen in the future. You should be responding to what's happening right now and not assuming that it's going to dictate what the future holds. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of what I've been talking about of late with illustrators.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Yeah, I don't think that you should feel like, it's like that. There's an old punk band I can't remember the name of that.
The Ramones. They're called the Ramones.
No, it's not them. But it's like a permanent solution to a temporary problem. It's not Fugazi either. But you like
is Fugazi punk? They're not punk, are they? Yeah, they are.
Yeah, 100. Fugazi's like the real punk.
Sorry.
Come on.
Okay, sorry.
You grew up like
touched the nerve.
You grew up like 30 miles from probably a Discord house. Come on, man.
I touched the nerve. I'm sorry. Yes.
But yeah. Okay. I totally agree with you. There have been times when I've worked with a lot of authors with big names. Mm-hmm. There was a series that I did. I'll just talk about the series that I did with Mac Barnett, the Hijack series. Mm-hmm. We took that book out the first time, and we have the same agent, and we did a pitch and everything. And I think it was rejected by like all 5 houses. They all wanted to do it, but they wanted to change it in a way that we were not sort of happy with. And so we decided to like sit on it, and it felt like a rejection. It felt like we were really excited and juiced about this thing and really wanted to make it the way that we wanted to make it. And nobody else really saw it that way. And it really felt like a rejection. And we were pitching it as 4 books. So it was like a big ask,
Right. And from the publisher's angle, from my former angle, it was a little like, okay, how much can we afford here? What can we do that's not going to blow the P&L up? So it wasn't just like, this is the product, this is the project, here are the creators, which is always exciting, but it's always like, well, can we afford this? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. So that was always the balancing act from the publisher's angle.
Well, sure. And I totally get that. And, to say something you say all the time, 100%.
I know. I know. It's weird. I didn't know I did that until this podcast. I swear.
It's like one of those things where like, you don't notice it until someone points it out, and then you can't. You just hear you hear yourself saying it, and you're like, I say it too.
Yeah, I have noticed. I'm actually it's mutating. I'm now saying I find myself saying 1,000% and 1,000,000%. Yep. No, I know, listener. I know. I'm saying it, and it's
a billion.
I can't help it.
A billion and infinity percent.
Infinity percent, dude. All right. Sorry.
Anyway,
so,
the point. Yeah, the point of that was that. And I don't think, I think like people did, it wasn't really a question of money as far as I remember. Mm-hmm. It was a question of the vision for the project.
Right.
And we put it away, and I was kind of like, all right, well, that was a fun few weeks when we put that pitch together, but it's not going to happen. What's next? It was maybe like 9 months, almost a year later, when our agent called and he was like, hey, I sent this back out to a couple other places, and Viking, it was Ken Wright again, came back, but he doesn't want to do 4 books. And we were like, oh, okay. Well, and he said he wants to do 8 books. I was like, oh, okay. So it just became like something that we hadn't even really, maybe we had thought from the beginning, like, oh, this could be a series. This could be a bunch of books.
Right.
It just meant that it wasn't over. It was temporary, that thing.
100%. Oh God,
was that not intentional?
That was not intentional.
You got a problem.
I do. I really, really do. You have no
All right,
idea.
so I know
sir.
you want. So let's talk about AI, and then we can finish the whole thing up.
Let's not. God, I'm a cliche. I feel like I'm starting to hear it. No, let's not do that. Yeah, I want people to hear that. I want people to know, and not just know. They know. It's one thing to know. It's the other thing to fully embrace and believe that whatever hardship you are going through, it's happening right now, for now. Who knows what tomorrow brings? Just keep your head up. I don't know who I'm talking to. Everybody, nobody, somebody, myself, possibly. Tomorrow was another day. And as long as you just kind of keep at it, remain hopeful and consistent with whatever it is that you're doing, you'll give yourself a shot. You really, really will.
Yeah, for sure. What I love about this career, what I love about the field, the industry, the art form, you have a lot of authorship. There is just a tremendous amount of authorship, even if you are illustrating pictures for someone else's text. You still are writing your whole story with the images, and you have a lot of say as to what those images are going to be and what the characters are going to be. At least I've enjoyed that kind of a sort of autonomy and authorship in my career.
Well, I think that's what sets your books apart as well. I mean, you are truly an expositor of the children's book as an art object, or objet d'art, s'il vous plaît. Like, you really do think through the children's book as not just like a vessel of text and art. It's that for sure, but it's more than that. You think through having secondary characters that come from other books that you've done. You put in Easter eggs that refer to all sorts of things, from your loved ones to your interests. You think through the covers and the end papers, and so you think it through because it deserves to be thought through. And the kid deserves that level of quality and that level of thoughtfulness with the product, with the thing, with the book as art.
Yeah, I mean, I think well, thank you. I really do think about the audience, and I do have a tremendous amount of respect for kids, and I do my problems with the industry and with some books today is that I don't think that they exercise that same respect. Mm-hmm. It was interesting. You said the word vessel, which made me think of a teacher that I had when I was at University of the Arts, Susan Viguers. My book, Goodnight Owl, is dedicated to her.
What's her name?
Susan Viguers.
Viguers. Okay. I'll look her up.
Yeah, she's a poet and a bookmaker and a brilliant teacher. And I believe her mom was the editor of the Horn Book for some time.
That I've heard of.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And she would always say, the book is not a vessel. And it was something, I didn't really totally understand it until I started making books. But, that program that Kay and I went to, the Book Arts and Printmaking program, was all about printmaking, but it was always in service to making a book. You're always making a book. And there was never really an excuse to have like a blank page. If you're printing everything, and you might even be making the paper yourself, you're binding everything yourself. You have to consider the size of the book, and how does that, you love Beatrix Potter, I know. So like, how does the size of the book inform the story that's being told? How does a Richard Scarry book feel different than a Beatrix Potter book? Just because the book itself is not a vessel, it's part of it, so that, like, the spot color feeling or the matte paper feeling, or the stuff that I try to get at with my books, that tactile kind of experience that I try to get to, really comes from Susan. And just using the word vessel just brought me back there, made me think about her.
When you are approaching a book, I mean, do you think as like philosophically about it as what we're discussing now? Or, I mean, do you think of it in parts? Do you think of it as a whole? I mean, is there a larger approach, or are there like several medium-sized or small-sized approaches that you take whenever you're creating any kind of book?
I think in terms of like trim size and that kind of stuff, I think it's just like what feels right for the book,
right.
Or I think I make that sort of on a book to book basis with the idea that like 8x10 or 9x11 is not going to get pushback from anybody because those are like kind of conventional sizes.
I like to call them paths of less resistance.
Right. I haven't had too many books where, or maybe any, where I felt like, oh, it really needs to be this exact like sort of weird format, the way that like if I were doing a book of comic panels that read in sequence, and I felt like it needed to be, the size like that, like a short, skinny, long book, or something like that. I don't know if there's like a philosophical way of thinking about it in terms of just like, that's my aesthetic that I'm attracted to. And I'm trying to make stuff that looks like the books that I like, I'm obsessed, right, with John Alcorn or Jerry Smath or Arnold Lobel or something, so I'm like trying to make work that feels like I'm not, that I could maybe sit alongside their books. Well, so I don't know if that answers your question.
Good job so far. Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay. Yeah.
So, man, I really don't want to cut this off, but we kind of have to. I have meetings and whatnot, and I'm sure you have other things to do.
Your daughter's got to get in the
My daughter's got to get into the closet. Yes, she does. Yes, she most definitely does. Yep. So, gosh, bummer. I really don't want to. I want to keep talking, but let's kind of.
Invite me back sometime. Invite me back. I would love to talk to you. I mean, this has been a real pleasure, a real treat for me.
It's a little presumptuous of you. I have to say.
Oh, sorry. A little presumptuous. Do not do that. Okay. Well,
I've had Leonard.
Nice.
I've had Leonard on twice. Jim Hoover on twice.
Okay,
Stephen Heller.
5 years from now, give me a meeting.
I think that's no, I'm kidding. No. I did have someone say to me that I need to Joe Rogan my episodes a little bit more, meaning I need to just make them a little longer. And I've had many people suggest that to me over the years. And I agree. I think they need to be a little longer, just that I just don't. I feel like I'm taking up too much of some stranger's time. And so I want to try and keep it to an hour or less. But maybe I'll just start letting them fly. Maybe they'll go an hour 30, hour 45. I just know that some podcasts that I listen to, once I see that the new episode is up and I see the time is an hour 30, my very first reaction is, oh, Jesus.
Well, I agree with everything that those people said, except for the Joe Rogan part, but I
separate the politics out of that. Yeah,
I think maybe because you're producing this thing, you don't think about it in the same way. Like I think maybe you think about it as though it should all be ingested at once. But I listen to your podcasts like. I'll listen to 20 minutes while I'm like doing the dishes and then making my kids lunch. And then I'll listen to another 10 minutes while I'm walking my dog. And I listen to it in sections. So it's not like I sit down and say like, okay, the Greg Pizzoli thing. And I'm going to like take notes here. It's like it's on when it's on and I can press pause and it'll be waiting for me. So I wouldn't worry about that too much personally.
Thanks, Greg.
But all that being said, let's never do it again.
No. One and done. So when you, no, I'm kidding. So let's keep in mind that we do have illustrators and writers listening. What would be one piece of advice, word of wisdom, last thing that you'd like to leave them with from you to them?
I think going back to what I said before, that, that I have enjoyed a tremendous amount of authorship as a creator. Mm-hmm. And I do think that has I've been lucky in many ways, but I also think that I've written a lot of books, and I would encourage illustrators to try to write your own work too. Kids will ask me a lot of times, how do you write something, and my trick for them, if you're not confident in writing, is to just read a lot of stuff, and then when you find something that you like, read it again. There's this historian who I love his books. His name's Shelby Foote. You probably saw him on, if you ever watched the Civil War, what's that guy? The PBS documentary guy. Ken
Burns.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's on Ken Burns.
Okay.
He's got this like slow Southern drawl that you could like, I want him to read all my audiobooks, but he's sadly passed away.
Okay.
But he said in a lecture one time, find something that you like and read it and then read it again. Because once you've figured out where the person's going, you understand the plot and the characters, you understand where the writer's going with the story, you can read it again, read it a third time, and you'll figure out how they got there. And that for me has really helped me understand story structure and writing in a way that I hear on your podcast. I see it on, Substack stuff, that people really seem to think, drawing comes really natural to me, and writing is the hard part, and if you want to make books with your name on them where you write the story, that's a good way to do it, is to start writing them yourself.
To learn more about Greg and his books, visit gregpizzoli.com. If you find value in this podcast, consider becoming a patron. In return, you can access bonus episodes, receive invitations to our Art Directors After Hours series, and get a 10% off discount code for all ID offerings. Become a patron by visiting patreon.com/illustrationdept. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.